class is in session. It is I, Dr. Ted McNaler, your NXT digital coach, alongside my teaching assistant, Mr. Colin Wysong, and we are here to talk about NXT August 5th, 2020, another building episode as we go towards TakeOver 30. And this one, well, I'd say this one was certainly a significant episode. We had some big storyline progressions take place, and I'm excited to dig down deep into it and talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. Of course, we're just talking about business here, whether or not segments did the business that they were supposed to, or if they had opportunities where perhaps business could have been better. And we're going to talk about all that here today on the Next Level Wrestling Review. But before we get into all that, Colin, how are you doing this morning?
Oh, Ted, I'm doing great. Thank you. I've been promoted to teacher's assistant. Like I'm still over here trying to learn and get educated, and I guess now I'm helping you clean the erasers after class and bringing jackets back from the ring. You know, I'm having a lot of fun, Ted. Thank you.
Well, you know, being a teacher has a lot of responsibilities, Colin, and I simply cannot take on everything. So if you can take on the role of teaching assistant here, and I think at this point, you've been around long enough and started picking up on things. Certainly, we're all learning. We're all learning. It's all part of the process and all part of life in general. But I think at this point, Colin, that you've at least gotten to the point where I feel confident that you can assist me as my assistant coach, assistant teacher, if you will. And I think you're finally ready for this stage in your career, Colin. So congratulations, my friend. We're ready to take you to the next level.
Oh, I'm so excited. I am ready. And actually, you know, you're not the only one that's been putting us over lately here, Ted. The guys at the Wednesday locker room had some really kind things to say. And as you know, one of the three amigos over there at the Wednesday locker room, Andrew Bello, used to be the host of the Next Level Wrestling podcast here. So there were a lot of big shoes to fill. He put us over, and I'm actually going to play that for you right now. So you haven't heard this yet, Ted. So Ted's hearing this for the first time. It's Strangler Steve. It's Bello. They have shout out segment during the show, so they really put us over. And so I'm going to play this for you now.
There is a percentage of women where that is true as well. So maybe Colin has stumbled upon himself. And this is really a rather fortuitous segue into my shout-outs for the week because I wanted to shout out my boys over on the Next Level Review. Dr. Man Beast over there dropping knowledge, and Colin absorbing it noticeably at a rate that's pretty rapid considering they've only really been working together for a couple of weeks over there. It almost reminds me of a young God of Thunder and a wise connoisseur of colossal kajungas sort of dynamic. It's just not nearly as sexy, stranglery, or thunderous, but my show's in good hands over there. Just shout outs to the boys over there. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, you know, I actually listened to one of the episodes when I was flying a couple weeks ago, and yeah, it was a great show. Lots of good knowledge. I mean, listen, Ted the Man Beast has been in the business for over 15 years. He's literally done everything you can do, from bringing back ring jackets to promoting shows and everything in between, including wrestling, including, you know, everything that comes with production and being an agent and stuff. And, you know, there's just so much you can learn from him by listening to him, and just sit back and give yourself a free lesson. I mean, literally, I don't even understand why Hameen doesn't charge for these shows, for the amount of stuff that you can learn from him. I mean, he's giving you a college degree, and if you don't listen, then that's like just like openly saying, I do not want to learn today. So when you listen to the Next Level Wrestling Review, I mean, you're going to learn something every single week, and it's great to see that Colin was excited about, kind of essentially tagging up with Man Beast on this project. And, you know, it's a different show from when you had it. I loved when you had it. It was my favorite podcast of the week, but I think, like you said, it's in great hands. And it is a different look at NXT, but I think it's also a very welcomed change too. So I think they're doing a great job with it. So, you know, those guys, I hope they keep it up and, keep dropping knowledge every single week. And talk about putovers. I mean, I was listening.
Wow. Very, very complimentary. I'm truly humbled. You know, I'm someone that, believe it or not, as much as I appreciate getting the chance to share the knowledge I've gained over the years, I like I said earlier, we are lifetime learners, and I am always the first one to say, I need to learn more. I need more information. I need to ask more questions. So knowing at least that getting the chance to share the knowledge and experiences that I've gained over the years is appreciated, and to have, our seasoned colleagues basically complimented and put it over. It's huge. And I hate being put over, believe it or not, but at the same time, it is humbling, and it's much appreciated. And at least I know that we're doing work here that is appreciated. Certainly Andrew Bello did a tremendous job for 200 episodes. And I knew going into this that I was not going to fill his shoes, but I could certainly put a different spin on it in a way, so to speak. And I'm glad to see that, anytime you try something different, there's always the opportunity where people are going to have backlash or not like the changes. So I'm glad to hear that, even though we've changed it up a little bit as far as how we present the next level review and the NXT review, that it is being appreciated by everyone that is listening. And certainly in any time I'm able to pass on knowledge and experience to anybody, and this is one of those opportunities for me, I'm always glad to do it, and very appreciative of it, and appreciative of the kind words by both Andrew Bello and Strangler Steve. Those guys are also a tremendous wealth of knowledge and experience, and definitely urge you to continue to check out the shows that they're doing as part of the Hameen Media Group. But definitely appreciate the kind words. No one's allowed to put me over the rest of the year, though. I can't take any more compliments.
No more compliments.
It drives me crazy.
No more compliments for Ted, guys. And just don't tell Rip that I'm over here getting a free education, because, he will come call me a lot of names and ask me for his money up front.
Yeah, you better lay low there, Colin, or otherwise you might be having to PayPal Rip some of your dues money here.
But I got something here for you, Ted. I got my homework.
Oh, good. You actually did it before class.
Yeah, I got it right here. It's all right here.
And we have got a couple emails as well. Let me pull these up here. We might as well start with the homework. Make sure no one during class can start writing it down and trying to quickly get their homework done. Well, I guess since before I get into the submitted homework, Colin, since you have your homework ready, why don't we start with you and present your assignment and your thoughts here.
So the assignment that you gave us last week was on Adam Cole and Pat McAfee, kind of where you would want to see them go after the blow up that they had on Pat McAfee's show. And for me, I felt like they would have done some more behind the scenes stuff like they kind of have done. Maybe bring Pat McAfee on and maybe have a moderated thing with like Triple H. It's kind of there between the two guys. Like, hey, let's work these issues out. Like, I know both of y'all. Like, I respect both of y'all. Like, let's not have this kind of thing going on. And then eventually, Pat just gets tired of Adam. Adam gets tired of Pat. These two guys end up coming to blows. And then we end up getting a match maybe 3 or 4 weeks down the road, maybe on the E, because I feel like this could be elevated to a main roster feud, so to speak, like something that they could put on like a bigger show, like a SummerSlam or something like that.
I was about to say, if you're saying 3 weeks, I'd assume SummerSlam instead of TakeOver, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
and that gives, because McAfee's a crossover guy, he can bring the NFL eyes and a lot of those other things to the WWE. So I feel like that would be the blow-off match. Well, eventually, of course, Adam Cole's going to go over some way, somehow. Maybe Undisputed Era gets involved, but I also think that Cole, because he's talked about his size and he's talked about how small he is, Cole has to figure out a way to win this without the help of the Undisputed Era, because kind of the whole gist of the thing that started it is because he called Cole out and said, no, you didn't do this by yourself. Like, we watched you with those 3 other guys dominate NXT. Like, you didn't do any of that by yourself. And of course you're small and all those other things. So I think eventually Cole will go over, but he's got to be able to do it by himself.
I agree. I like it. So you're feeling like with the momentum and everything, this is something that should go ahead and progress and escalate over the next few weeks leading to a match potentially at SummerSlam.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in that match, you feel that's where Adam Cole should go ahead and get his heat back, I guess, at that point on that show without the help of the Undisputed Era.
Yes, I think he should, without the help. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, before I get into, well, I guess we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit before I read the submission. So I think that's great, especially as we saw last night. Things definitely heated up. I don't think moving towards, go ahead. And I mean, we have a lot of momentum. We might as well go ahead and move towards that. Now, I do think that they could milk this a little bit. So we've seen Pat McAfee, as we saw last night, get the better of Adam Cole. We'll talk more about that as we go forward. So I think I would actually continue that momentum. And I agree with you. I think Adam Cole should go over in the first match. I think both of these guys, even Pat McAfee as a podcast host or show host for WWE, I mean, I still think as he has long-term potential as a character, and potentially I wouldn't even say, necessarily a wrestling star or one of their superstars, but someone that can occasionally jump in and have kind of a celebrity style match. So I would say you would want both. I would put Adam Cole over the first time, have him win by nefarious means. Now I might even say go ahead and have the Undisputed Era cheat the first time, only so Pat McAfee can then go back, just like he said before, like, hey, just like I said before, you're a little bitch, and you had to have your guys come in and get, stirred up again. And then that's when Adam Cole says, screw this, fine. We'll do it one-on-one. And Pat McAfee at this point can even say, well, it's up the ante a little bit. If you lose the match, you're done with NXT. You're out of here. Because I've talked before about how, in my opinion, I feel Adam Cole has done about as much as he can in NXT, and that would be a good way to transition. It would be a good story to tell, and that allow Pat McAfee to get that win back on Adam Cole. If it's worked the right way, and you put over that Pat McAfee has been training, he's a former NFL caliber athlete. He's someone, physically, while he's not a wrestler, has a lot of great physical prowess that he could put to use in the ring. So I don't think it would be necessarily wrong if done the right way. If after Adam Cole gets the victory on Pat McAfee, if they had a rubber match where Pat McAfee can get his win back on Adam Cole then has to do the blow off of leaving NXT, but then he can come back on either Raw or SmackDown and have a fresh start. And I would immediately upon his debut, obviously, especially after putting over a quote-unquote non-wrestler, even though he's someone that does have more physical capabilities, I would put heat on Adam Cole right away upon his debut onto Raw or SmackDown. And that's we could go into a whole other series of circumstances as far as how to do that. But I like that idea, and I think we can definitely build from that. So overall, I'd say I'll give you an A on that, Colin. I think that was pretty well done. Now, before we get to the extra credit, I do want to get to our submissions for the initial homework, which was Pat McAfee and Adam Cole booking out their feud. Let's see here. We have.
Well, I did have something, Ted.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
I feel like with last night's episode, they're already planting the seeds for Pat McAfee to have a really strong weapon. So it seems like that's one thing that they might try to work into their match. Is he going to be able to punt Adam Cole again like he did, and that's a little foreshadowing. But I'm excited to hear these submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. We have someone hasn't written in yet, but I assume someone that's been listening for a while. At least he's been listening to other of our HMG properties. Looks like his name is Hans. It says, greetings, C-Dub and Dr. Beast. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hans, and I am GGP's favorite fan. I did my homework as well as the extra credit. I was loaded and took hella notes. Awesome. Ask Colin how my emails usually go and buckle up. I got some thoughts. How do these emails usually go, Colin? I haven't read this one yet.
Oh, gosh. Hans is known for Ted, you might want to clear all your patience. We're probably going to be here through Saturday.
Well, we'll see if I can briefly comb through it here. Looks like not too long. Maybe this is just an introductory email. Either way, he says, first, in regards to Dominic Dijakovic. So I guess this was from last week's homework. I have a skeleton outline. I'll need some prose to fill in the gaps. Mind you, I'm loaded. Man, I like that you're loaded when you write. Either way, as far as Dijak, I heard you all say mixing too many people's business gets sketchy, but I feel he can be mixed in the Cross Keith Lee storyline. Okay. For example, week 1, Scarlett can come down and just watch Dijakovic as he takes a loss. The next week, Scarlett can come down and engage him in conversation, also causing him to take a loss. And weeks 3 and 4, kind of the same thing to put him on a losing streak. Have Keith Lee come down like Pryor, mix in a little Cross like someone to spin off the Lee Cross story. Dijak gets some retribution on Cross, maybe costing Lee the belt, and rekindling the Lee Dijak feud, but with a little more heat. I don't know, Doc. This is my first week as a booker. All right. Well, Colin, I'll give you the first crack at it. What do you think about those just right off the bat?
I like it. I like the interjecting Scarlett in there with kind of Dijakovic. You know, she kind of gets paired off with him while Cross gets paired off with Lee. I like it.
Yeah, and I think I like, though, the business was really so, and that's where here's the thing. And when I talk about spotlights, I talk about what business are we building towards. So for that, your business was either working towards a triple threat, or actually the business is working towards Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic. Karrion Kross really is not the focus. I'm not opposed to that idea. I think it's great. It's a good way to have Dijakovic have a reason to have a chip on his shoulder. And that's where I like it, because the first thought when I gave the assignment was, okay, Dijakovic came back and lost 2 matches in a row. How do we build him back up? And then Hodge presents an idea where he continues to lose, which you would think logically would not be what you would want to do. But the way he laid it out actually would work, because it allows people to have an understanding of why Dijakovic is doing this and why he's getting that chip on his shoulder. And that can allow him to evolve as a character, become a little more aggressive. And based on what I've heard from you and what we saw between Keith Lee and Dijakovic a couple weeks ago, they have some history. And so certainly it seems like perhaps rehashing them may be of interest to longtime fans. And certainly if they can bring the emotion to the feud and have people understand why these two are fighting, then certainly new fans that are tuning in, I think it could also get behind that. So I'm not opposed to that. The only thing I would say is it takes the spotlight then off of Cross. However, he could then spin off and do his own thing at that point. So that's the only thing I would say, that he wasn't necessarily accounted for, but it doesn't mean that he couldn't just spin off and go into a title feud with someone else, because then at that point, Dijakovic and Keith Lee don't need the championship for people to care about what they're doing, because they have a feud that means more than the championship. It's personal at that point. So I'm not opposed to that. I like it. He then goes on to talk about the extra credit. So before I go into that, Colin, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about. Oh wait, is it the extra credit or? Was
he talking about the one that you and I specifically gave us about the AEW show from last week?
Yes. So we'll hold on that one, because I want to get to the other. Well, actually, no, I'll take that back. It looks like Atherton actually his was just the extra credit as well, Joe Atherton. So that being said, looks like I guess we'll go right into that. So as far as the extra credit, Colin, what were your thoughts as far as some of the nuances and differences between Warhorse and Kingston as far as their matches with Cody?
So Ben and I talked a little bit about this on the Smack Attack on Friday. Ben came on and we kind of touched on it, because there was something similar on SmackDown that kind of brought this up, and I was excited for Warhorse. I watched a lot of his promos. The guy has his character down, and then he came out on AEW. He's got the gimmick, he's got the headbanging, all that type of stuff. But then the match started, and I told Ben this, Ted, is like I listened to Ben talk about like Tommy Dreamer has like a formula of matches, and I'm assuming in a wrestling school you guys have like a base of matches that you kind of teach to like get a guy in a flow kind of thing. I felt watching like, and I've never been to wrestling school, I don't know much about that, but I felt watching this, it was a very kind of intermediate level, like a formulaic match that was put together for these guys. And I felt like, you know, Warhorse probably needed that, because he's not ready for prime time. He's not quite there. And I like the match. It was a fun little match, but compared to a guy like Eddie Kingston, where he came out on the mic, killed it. He came out in the ring, killed it, you know, and granted, yeah, he's more of a gimmick match kind of guy. You know, Ben schooled me to that. Like, you know, why do you think they came out and did the hardcore match? I liked the Eddie Kingston match better than I liked the Warhorse and Cody match, because I felt like it told more of a story. Again, you could see the skill level in kind of a Warhorse match compared to an Eddie Kingston match. And you could tell that Cody was kind of carrying Warhorse for their match compared to kind of how Eddie and Cody, you know, you could tell that they might have been trading back and forth with kind of how they were calling the match and stuff like that. But again, untrained eye. I'm new to this. Of the two matches, like I said, I like the Eddie Kingston match more. But then Ben schooled me to the fact that he's like, well, of course, Eddie Kingston. Why do you think he hasn't really gotten into a big promotion yet? And why do you think they did this hardcore match? And so he opened my eyes to some other things too.
Yeah, it kind of was a good chance to educate the non-hardcore fans that might not otherwise know who Eddie Kingston is, as far as, who he is and why he's important in regards to the world of professional wrestling. And so I think, to that end, it was a good introduction to not just who he is, but why you should care about watching what he does.
Which Eddie Kingston got signed. I don't know if it's been announced that Warhorse got signed yet or not. Now the one thing I will say for the Warhorse matches, I felt like he was trying to get in the headbanging stuff a little bit too much. Like there was one time where he did a move, started headbanging, and he was like, oh crap, I got to pin Cody. And he stopped and kind of went back to go pin Cody. So I felt like he might've been trying to put the gimmick over a little bit too much in the match, but I get that that's part of the character.
Yeah, and that may have been an opportunity where they presented it as part of the match, as to show, he's getting too worked up into his character and not taking advantage of pinning opportunities. And so I don't know, but that certainly, to me, that's the vibe I got when I saw it. Is okay, he's clearly, they're trying to put over that this guy is someone that has a lot of hype behind him, but doesn't quite have the seasoning yet to be able to put all the tools together. That being said, I thought both matches still elevated the challengers just in much different ways. But before I get too into details, I do want to make sure we have some time to go over the other submissions. We'll start with Hans, since I'm already on his email still. So what he has to say is, he says the matches are glaring opposites. One is no DQ, one is not, of course. Kingston is an indie legend. Warhorse is an indie darling. No DQ versus regular rules. Thumbtacks. I love thumbtacks, according to Hans. I will say, as a wrestler, as someone that performs, I am not as inclined to love thumbtacks, but I think for the match rationale, and for, again, educating the fan on who Eddie Kingston is and what he does and what he's about, I thought in that context this was fine, as well as in the context of people flipping through the channels and seeing thumbtacks being laid out in a wrestling ring. I think, even a casual person that might not even watch wrestling might flip through and say, what the hell's about to happen here? You know what I mean?
Or if you're flipping through and you see that image of Cody getting up and he's got all the tacks in his back, right, you might stop and be like, oh, why does this guy have tacks in his back?
Right. Hans goes on to say that Kingston said Tony Khan paid him to kick Cody's ass does not make sense, because we know Tony Khan and Cody are boys. He says no psychology. Now, I can understand your point in that, we see that they're close, and that's where, everything always has to have context. Now, I could appreciate if Tony Khan said, hey, I want Cody to have the best competition, because I know more people are going to watch our show if I give them the best. So I'm going to find people that I feel can kick my friend's ass, because if they can, then I want them signed on my show. You know what I mean? And that's where having that context would be, to me, at least have a rationale and psychology than, hey, I want my best friend to get beat up. So I can understand what he means. And I think if it had more context, perhaps, of, hey, this is a business decision, and if he whoops my best friend's ass, then I guess my best friend needs to train a little harder, because we're here to make money and have the best in competition. You know what I mean? I think that would at least imply that while they're friends, if business is business. Hans goes on to say that Warhorse was chain wrestling Cody, had a good exchange with Cody, very condescending. Feel a heel turn tease. FTR and Spears with Cody, a new Horseman, not conspiracy style. That certainly would be an interesting twist. I did not get that vibe. Cody, I feel like his condescending was more so to show the difference of he is a seasoned professional versus someone who doesn't have that seasoning. And I can understand that point, and that it's a hard line to cross, because you don't want to come across too heelish. And I don't think he did things that were overly heelish, but certainly things that you would expect a heel to do, just acting more kind of smarmy and Warhorse rather than taking him seriously at some points. But I think that was part of the story, was Cody feels like he's above Warhorse. So Warhorse just hanging in there with Cody and getting some defensive pins and opportunities was showing, hey, Cody took this guy for granted, and he's a little tougher than he expected him to be. Granted, the match still ended up being shorter, and in the grand scheme of things, Eddie Kingston, of course, came across looking more like a star than Warhorse. But I think also going into that match, I think they had an idea that they were probably going to sign Eddie Kingston versus Warhorse. I think we will still see him make appearances here and there, and he could end up signing. I think this is just an opportunity just to at least give him a set of fresh eyes upon him. And I think he impressed enough, and I would like to see him get other opportunities and see if he can make more out of that. So we'll see as time goes forward what happens as far as Warhorse. Hans then finishes up by saying it's hard to compare since one was a regular match and one was a hardcore no DQ. And I do agree with that. It's just a matter of, obviously the business for both being a little bit different. He then goes on to say, how much gas did Zack Ryder do in 90 days? And I won't touch that. Obviously, he looked like he was very well enhanced upon his debut in AEW, and he looked great. So either way, Hans, thank you for your thoughts here. I appreciate it. And in general, I think he's got some good ideas here. I think there's just some nuances that, may or may not occur because of other business that's taking place right now. But I think overall, the ideas, had some legs to them. And of course, our friend. Oh, go ahead.
Well, before you get to others, there's one other thing I wanted to say about Warhorses, and I saw this in the IWC for people who may not have known him, and it may just be people that were just trying to be dicks. But and again, if I had a name like the Juggernaut, and I'm like, the Juggernaut's coming out here, and then I came out there, a lot of people were like, yo, this guy's Warhorse, like he's smaller than Cody, like he's not really, like his physique's not there, like they really kind of went after him about his name and his look. It's like, if you're going to call yourself Warhorse, or if I'm the Ultimate Warrior and then I got a beer gut and, I'm really out of shape kind of thing. Like, not that Warhorse is like that, but is that something that you guys try to, like, when you're giving somebody a gimmick or you're helping somebody along with a gimmick, is it like, hey, you might not want to, go by this per se, or is that something that goes on behind the scenes when you guys are helping kind of create characters for wrestlers and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say that I intervene too much in regards to names unless it's just absolutely ridiculous, or if it's something that's overly offensive. Like, for instance, we had these two guys, and this was before, all the riots and protests went out, but we had a white guy and a half black guy, and they said, we would like to call ourselves the half-breeds. And I said, absolutely not. That is racist, and that is not the right kind of heat. And they didn't understand. They did not understand. They didn't think it was racist. They just thought, well, no, because we're both mixed. And the white guy was mixed between two, like, European. And it's like, no, you're white. You're not mixed. It's like, yeah, I have German and Dutch in me too, but that doesn't mean I'm mixed. I'm a white guy. And the other guy, he was a half white, half black. But I was like, no, we're not calling you all the half breeds. That is not. First of all, you're baby faces, and even if you were heels, that is the wrong kind of heat, because that's that's racially prejudiced. But other than if something is egregious like that, I normally don't intervene. I think it's all in how you present your character. And to your point, Colin, I think, and that's where I didn't see the show as far as what happened prior to that. I assume, did they hype up Warhorse with any promos or anything like that to show who he was or why he was getting this opportunity?
No, not really promos. They did the thing where, like, Cody and Arn are sitting there, and I guess they're talking about potential matchups, and Arn's just kind of like, hey, what about that Warhorse kid? And they don't really talk much about it. So it was kind of them throwing it out, but it's more of the IWC kind of really pushing.
I would have not only put that over, I would have, and that's where show don't tell, I would have maybe you have like a 30-second to 1 minute promo of Warhorse showing, I'm assuming online he's doing some, some over-the-top promos and things like that, doing things that are getting him over. I would have had 30 seconds to a minute of all the stuff that's been getting him over with the internet wrestling community, so that way people at home watching can have an understanding of, okay, I get it. I can see why this guy has appeal and why his over-the-top character works. Then you have the camera deadpan from either the TV or the computer over to Cody and Arn, like they just watched it. And then you can have that scene of like, okay, this guy, you know what I mean? Because then you have that dichotomy of, okay, fans can see why Warhorse is popular, but you can see the seasoned veteran isn't sweating him because he thinks it's just a gimmick. And then to me, that would have, they could have had still the exact same match, but it would have been more played up more of, why people are buying an indie goof. And I don't think he came across as an indie goof, but I would say, though, they didn't do a lot to establish that he was not an indie goof, though. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where I would have made it clear, like, hey, this guy does have potential. He does, have good character, and this is who he is, and this is why people are getting behind him, rather than, okay, he's just a guy that headbangs at the wrong time and, looks ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to that, and I think that's where always a little bit of setup and storytelling and character development can go such a long way, even if it's a one-off like this, since they are bringing in these quote unquote indie darlings to come in and wrestle Cody every now and again as part of the TNT championship. I think it would help them. It would certainly behoove them to take more time to put over some of these guys that are coming in. Like they did a great job with Eddie Kingston and just cutting a promo, and that's where he didn't need the hype video. But I think someone like Warhorse that's been putting out these videos that have gotten him over, I think that's where people needed to be educated on that and shown that so they could have an understanding of why they should like this guy. And that's just me. That being said, with Mr. Joe Atherton, of course, I want to read what he has to say before we get into the NXT review. He says, hello, Dr. Ted and Colin. I'll jump straight into things as I don't want to take up more time than needed on your show. I'll address things in bullet points to make it more concise. All right. Here's his observations as far as the differences in those matches. He said Eddie Kingston was a surprise, whereas Warhorse was known. That is true. For me, there's always more buzz and a surprise. I can definitely see that as well. He said Kingston got to cut a promo, which we talked about, something that's most definitely his strength. He's one of the best talkers in the business. And as we implied, that helped to set the stage for the match, too. The heel-face dynamic was completely different in each match, and I agree with that. Eddie was the heel in the match, though through his comments on the mic pre-match threatening Arn and sneak attacking Cody before the bell, Cody mocked Warhorse by doing press-ups mid-match and acting cocky, seeing his internet meme wrestler as not a serious threat. And I like that. And that's where, it's all about circumstances. I think based on the circumstances, Cody was the quote-unquote heel, but I don't think he's turning heel, just to be clear. I think it was just in that situation, he was playing the role of the heel because he felt, as Cody Rhodes, he is a better, more seasoned and polished wrestler than Warhorse. And that's simply what that was. That wasn't him alluding to a heel turn. At least that's not what I gathered. To me, it was based on this one situation, he's in more of the heel scenario than the babyface scenario versus Eddie Kingston. He was more in the babyface scenario. He goes on to say Eddie's match was a hardcore match to mask the fact that he can't wrestle. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I think it was more based on his history of being a hardcore wrestler. I don't know about Eddie Kingston, so I can't comment on whether he truly can or can't wrestle. I don't know. He says this was probably also done as well to his body breaking down, and that may be true. I'm not sure. Also highlighted by excellent selling of his knee during the match, which led to the figure 4 selling. Warhorse match was basically a squash match with a few hope spots. Cody acted pretty healing throughout, but gained Warhorse's respect by the end. And that's where, again, by the end, he came back and he didn't necessarily turn heel or I think even tease heel. He just was more being cocky because he thought he had this guy's number. And he did, but obviously it took a little more than what he thought it was going to take. And then lastly, he concludes by saying Eddie Kingston did much better than Warhorse as he ended up signed by AEW. Warhorse leaves with national television exposure. Absolutely got great experience working a TV match and a nice little payday during a time with no independent wrestling going on. So it's not like he came out of the experience with nothing. Sorry if that went long. Always getting my shit in, Athers. Always got to get your shit in, Athers. Always appreciate you, my friend. And I think made some good points there. I would say, what did he say at the end here that I wanted to comment on? Oh, as far as, I don't think it's necessarily that, it kind of alluded to it. I don't think it was a matter of, hey, Eddie Kingston did a great job, let's give him a contract. I am willing to bet that they probably knew they were going to give him a contract going into it. And with Warhorse, they probably knew they weren't going to give him a contract. That being said, I would expect to see Warhorse maybe getting a couple more opportunities here and there. Will it lead to signing a contract? Maybe, maybe not. But I would definitely expect him to make a couple more appearances, even if it's just, wrestling on dark to put over someone else on the roster. And that in of itself could lead to main event, or not main event, but a main roster opportunity.
Now, is this one of those situations with Cody and Warhorse where Cody's character really kind of dictated whether or not he was heel or face, like what you and I have talked about, where you don't really want to be a heel or a face. You want to really perfect your character.
Yes.
So that it's based on kind of what your character does. So that's what we saw with Cody.
Yeah, I think so. And you got to think Cody also plays up, He's a class guy. He's a professional. And so that's where, he might do some things that come across as heelish, like nice cars and wear nice suits, but he does it in a way to where when we see like him doing angles backstage or whatnot, you can tell he's trying to think as the representative of the company, as the consummate professional business person. And that's where it's all relative to who he's feuding with or who he's interacting with as a character. And in these two separate situations, it just dictated that one week his character was more of and that's where I don't like using babyface and heel. I really like to think of it as who in this situation, who is the protagonist and the antagonist. Take it back to acting, and with Eddie Kingston, Cody Rhodes was your protagonist. And then with Warhorse was the protagonist. And that's where it can fluctuate based on the situation. Certainly someone that's overly heelish all the time, it's going to be hard to put them in a situation that makes them baby, but you can absolutely do it. And I think this is a situation where Cody is just being Cody, trying to play that to the height of who Cody is. And I think to that end, personally, and that's where Ben and I may disagree, I think he does a good job with it. I think based on the situation, again, people were easily able to tell who was the person they should be cheering for and who was not in both situations. And to me, that is what makes it clear that Cody is doing what he needs to do in order to get that story across on our television screens.
I like it. I had fun kind of watching both matches. Like I don't watch AEW all that much, so it was kind of fun getting to watch both those matches. And I honestly have never watched a Warhorse match. I've never watched an Eddie Kingston match. So getting to see them for the first time too, that was fun and exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they'll do with Eddie Kingston because LAX is still the Pride and Powerful, those guys, and see what he kind of does. But we're not here to talk about AEW, Ted.
That's right.
We're here to talk about NXT. And
100. Let's dive into it.
We started the show with Rhea Ripley versus Dakota Kai. And Dakota Kai eventually wins this match, Ted. But I was very surprised by how this match went, because you and I have been talking about this whole entire time about how we need to build Dakota Kai's heat. We need to build Dakota Kai's heat. And Dakota Kai did nothing to build her heat in this match. I don't feel like they're really advancing the business. I mean, they advanced Mercedes Martinez and the Robert Stone business with what was going on here, but I don't feel like it added any extra heat to Dakota Kai. Because, I mean, even she didn't see what happened, so she doesn't even really know, like, how she won or whatnot, because Mercedes Martinez came in, blindsided Rhea Ripley, and then was gone even before Dakota Kai had a chance to see it. So maybe that falls somewhere in the booking. Maybe she can, rub that in Rhea Ripley's face. Like, yeah, I beat you. I'm the number one contender, even though we all know the truth that Mercedes Martinez kind of helped her out with that.
Yeah. You said it wonderfully, Colin, because you're absolutely right. The spotlight here, the business here, the heat, the business was to get heat. It was not to get heat on Dakota Kai. It was to get heat on Mercedes Martinez and the Robert Stone brand. And that's where Dakota Kai can still get heat from this. Not in this moment, not in this exact moment, but on the back end, certainly, when it's revealed that she, had assistance and help, yet she should go on and talk about how she defeated Rhea Ripley single-handedly, didn't need anyone by her, you know what I mean? As a heel, continue to lie and talk about how easily, maybe not easily, but how she able to single-handedly defeat Rhea Ripley. And this is a great way where characters and different storylines and feuds can interact with each other and cross over, but not necessarily share the spotlight. And that's where, for the match itself, the match was really about Dakota Kai and Rhea Ripley. And in a sense, it was to put over, really both competitors, but I think it was really to more shine Rhea Ripley as a strong competitor. But in doing that, it allowed then it to mean that much more to get the heat on the back end for Mercedes Martinez and Robert Stone when they interfered at the end of the match and ran away with it, for them to get that heat and that rub, so to speak. And now we are interested, at least potentially, I am, as far as seeing now what is going to happen between Rhea Ripley going against Mercedes Martinez and the Robert Stone brand. And to me, that was the business of this match, was the finish and getting that over. And kudos to Mercedes Martinez for getting in there and getting the hell out before the referee had any chance to see her. That was an incredibly quick running at the end, but effective. The camera caught it, and she got the heck out of Dodge full finish, and that's how you do it. And I can't how many times I've seen a heel do a run-in at the end, and it's either too long or it's mistimed, and it just doesn't work. This was right on point, and obviously expectedly so. Mercedes Martinez has been around a while. She's a consummate professional, but just more so echoes, that she's well seasoned and obviously knows what she's doing. And placement is one of those things that it's really hard to teach, and it's something that you just learn over time. And so clearly, though, ring placement on this finish was right on point. So I think as someone that is used to producing television and seeing spots maybe not go as well as they could, or even worse, spots that get missed or not caught or mistimed, this was right on the money, and it was definitely appreciated. Uh-oh, Colin, you're cutting off. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself there. We did have a running theme. Like a couple weeks ago, our word for the show was opportunity. This week, there were a lot of stars from the Australia, New Zealand area on the show today. We had this next match, Bronson Reed and Shane Thorne, and then later on we had Tegan Knox and Indi Hartwell.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that till as soon as you brought up. I was like, you know what, you're right, there was, and I don't know if that was purposefully done, because I could also see from a television standpoint, especially as to be, I'm sure, even though right now we're during a global pandemic, is I'm sure still looking towards the future for potential, areas of growth. And Australia, is obviously its own entity, being its own area of the world down there, and it makes me wondering, though, if that was maybe done to see, how well their numbers did in Australia for this episode, to see if there might be some future business that could be done. I'm not saying, we're leading towards NXT Australia or anything like that, which I'm sure people in Australia would love to have. And I'm not saying it's not either. It very well could be. I don't know. I don't know how the market is down there for wrestling, but it makes me curious, though, since you brought it up, if maybe that they use this as an opportunity just to see how these numbers did with all these Australian and New Zealand superstars on the show.
So we got Bronson Reed versus Shane Thorne, and I don't know if you know much about Shane Thorne, Ted, but he
Not
was
really.
a part of an Australian tag team called the Mighty Don't Kneel. They have a really huge following. They were really big on like kind of the outside, and before they came in, it seems like they kind of rolled through the IWC. They were in New Japan for a little while before they came to NXT. But of course, like all things, usually when Vince and Triple H kind of get their meat hooks on you, they really couldn't find a thing for the Mighty Don't Kneel. I think they've ended up repackaging both of those guys, if not cut one of them. And Shane Thorne's still here. He's got a great look. I kind of like this new character that they have for him. But him and Reed have a little bit of history together. I'm assuming they've probably clashed with each other on the Australian scene. I feel like the business of this match, though, was to really just kind of put over Bronson Reed and really kind of help catapult him for more exposure for that ladder match for the North American title.
I agree. I think exactly that's what it was. The business was really to put over the North American title match, but as far as Bronson Reed's involvement in that match as a contender or challenger for that championship, to show that, hey, this guy very well may have all the tools that he needs to win that championship. But I think Shane Thorne here had a great performance as well, and that's something to where I think it's important. And a lot of these times, people think of these quote-unquote enhancement matches or squashes. This was not a squash. It may have been an enhancement match, but an enhancement match, you also got to put over your opponent as well, because it makes you mean more to know that you had to go up against someone that has the physical prowess to potentially take you off your feet, but yet you could overcome the opposition to win. And Bronson Reed, I feel, did that without making himself come across as overly weak here. In fact, Shane Thorne, I thought, looked tremendous. He had a lot of great athletic prowess in the ring. And my first thought was, is this, I guess I looked him up. I guess he's had opportunities on Raw and SmackDown. I had no idea. I'm just like, well, who's this guy? And that's where I feel like every couple of weeks we get someone new here that I'm like, who the heck is this person? And then I'd have to look up who they are. And it makes me, though, I guess I am somewhat concerned in the sense that they have a huge talent pool to work with. And I guess they're doing the best they can to rotate guys in and out, especially since they aren't on the road anymore. But I would say as a writer, it makes me concerned simply because it's hard to get people invested in so many people And it's not saying it's not possible, but it certainly is a chore, and that's where occasionally something like this, where someone comes in and as a casual viewer, it's like, well, who the heck is this person? I have no idea. But that being said, it didn't matter because it was clear, even though I didn't know who Shane Thorne was prior to this match, he proved himself to be someone that is worthy of physical competition in the WWE. He held his own to an extent against Bronson Reed, but in the end put him over because Bronson Reed was just too strong to beat. And in that sense, the business, I think, absolutely got done. It was short and sweet and to the point, and it made people, at least in theory, believe that Bronson Reed has a legitimate chance at becoming your next North American champion.
And I don't know how nitpicky you are about these kinds of things, but I feel like Shane did a really good job selling. Like, his facials were there. Like, he was always emoting something. I feel like when he was in the ring, like he would go to the corner and he would just like when he hit Reed with the knee shot, you know, he's getting fired up, he's doing it. And then when, you know, if Bronson Reed did a move to him, he's definitely selling the pain, selling the shock of these things. So I've started to kind of pay attention to these little things, you know, since doing the show with you, Ted. And I feel like he like that. I was like, this guy's just showing all kind of emotion in the ring the whole entire time during this match.
You know, I did not pick up on that, but I might have to go back and watch because that is something I am a bit nitpicky about. It's one of those things that I don't browbeat people that don't, because it is hard to get to the point to where you're just reacting as a character in that ring and as a wrestler, and not as someone that's thinking about the next spot that they're going to do in the ring. And I can't tell you how many times it's something that it's hard to catch, I think, to an untrained eye, but I see it plenty of times in all the promotions, not just WWE, where you have wrestlers that are in the middle of a match and you just can see on their face that they go from being in their character to being into thinking about what's going to happen next. And it's usually a very quick thing, but it's one of those things I do harp on because, again, to a casual viewer, the subconscious and unconscious messages you're sending mean way more than we really lend credence to. And having a match where you're constantly going in and out of character because you're having to think of what the next spot is, one time that can be fine. You do it consistently over a while, people just start to realize, I don't really get behind that wrestler. You know what I mean? And this could be, and some of these people, I won't necessarily name drop, but some of these guys can be incredibly technical and physically gifted wrestlers, but they still have those moments where they character-wise go out of it. And these are the guys that you hear about that are like, man, these guys are so good. Why can't they just get over? Or, you know, why can't, you know, why aren't people getting behind them? And part of that is, over time, they've just sent a series of subconscious and unconscious messages that, hey, he's not really the character that they're alluding to him portraying on your screen. He's a guy that's trying to be a character. And that's the difference. People want to see that gimmick or that character or that star that is that entity that they're seeing on their screen, and not a guy that's trying to be that character. Does that make sense? And it's a subtle difference, but you know, all the greats are the people that can maintain that character the whole time. And the difference is their ability to be able to maintain that the full time there on your television screen. So to that point, Colin, I'm glad you picked up on that, because I didn't. Because if Shane Thorne is already keeping the emotions and the facials down with everything that he's doing in the ring, that is huge. And that's one of those things that's really hard to teach. So I'm glad to hear that. And to me, that implies that he's got certainly a bright future ahead for him.
Yeah, well, we go outside, Breezango, and they're outside chilling. The next thing we know, an SUV pulls up, out jumps Legado del Fantasma, and they abduct Fandango.
Oh.
And shove him in the back of a trunk. There's a thing here with NXT and just shoving people in trunks. I don't get it. Maybe Triple H has some kind of weird fetish of getting stuffed in trunks. I don't know here, but they basically come in and kidnap Fandango. This is a fun little thing. There was a little bit of confusion that I noticed during this pre-tape, because you could tell I couldn't tell if maybe DJZ or Raul's trying to like put Fandango in the front seat, and they're like, no. Like, he kind of tells them like, no, bring him back here. Like, we're gonna take him and put him in the back seat, and then they drive off. So that's it for Fandango.
Yeah, that's it. Well, until a few segments at least. But For now, he's done.
For now, he is done. And then we go to the ring for our next series of triple threat matches for the NXT North American Championship. We've got Damien Priest versus Oney Lorcan versus a debuting Ridge Holland, which, Ted, they kind of ruined the match for me because they basically came out and said that Ridge Holland has never been pinned or submitted in NXT UK. So, of course, my first thought was they're about to protect that business and protect him. So either one, he's going to take his first loss, pin, or submission here in NXT in America because he's across the pond. It's different. Or he's not going to be the one taking the pin and or the submission in this match. It's either going to be Lorcan or Priest. This is a fun little match. I like what we saw from Ridge Holland. I haven't really seen much from him. Apparently, he over in NXT, I mean, he's gone against, I think, Walter and some of these other guys over there. So he's been up against their top tier guys. Really cool character package. His look is really good. I'm looking forward to more from Ridge, and you know what? There is that chance that he might be able to get his make his way back into this ladder match for the NXT North American Championship. But Damien Priest goes over in this match. The favorite wins. The favorite to win this whole thing is continuing on, and he ended the match with a nice little hematoma there on the side of his head. They even brought it up on commentary, and I'll talk about this as something that we see later. But I mean, wow, those guys were out. I mean, all three of those guys were out there hitting each other in this match. This was a really, really, really fun match. Like, I was surprised at how much fun I had watching this match.
They certainly kept the excitement up, and this is the difference of working TV style versus live event style. Although certainly I've seen quick pace matches on live events, but that's a whole nother soapbox. But this is where, a lot of times for television matches, you're wanting that quick, exciting, fun action. And so I thought to an extent, this is where these guys were able to bring it. My biggest issue in this match was we had Ridge Holland making his debut. He's a world beater. And obviously we knew by the finish, as a writer, he's not going over. And so the first thing he does in the ring, in my opinion, is show that Damien Priest is a way smarter wrestler than Ridge Holland. And to me, even though he got back on top for going into the commercial break, and I thought that was good because you want to put over this guy and his prowess, especially since he's new, I felt like they should have done more on the front end right from the get-go of the match to put him over. We saw one of the first things that happened is he took a European uppercut from Oney Lorcan, a man who, clearly looking at them is not as physically big as Ridge Holland. And then Ridge Holland delivered his own, which sure, it was stronger than Oney's, but Oney still just stumbled on his feet. I would have had him as soon as Oney gave him his and Ridge registers it, turn around, give him one of yours, and Oney should have just, in my opinion, flip-flopped and flew out of the ring at that point. Then Damien Priest could be like, oh, shit, he goes for something, and then that's when Ridge Holland could catch him into something. But instead what happened was he's not strong enough to take Oney Lorcan off his feet yet. Then Damien Priest does a series of moves that shows he's outsmarting Ridge Holland, and then that leads to the next series. And then eventually it goes back to Ridge Holland getting back on top at the end. But I think at that point, especially since Damien Priest is going over, showing Ridge Holland as a true threat to his ability to win the match, I think would have meant that much more in the beginning. And it's one of those things where, especially when you're building a new star, everything you do on the front end is meaningful. And it's where I don't think they necessarily killed him, but they didn't make him as strong as they could have if they just would have had him start cooking from the very beginning instead of having Damien Priest outsmart him at the beginning. But to your point, though, everyone forgot about that by the end. They just remembered the match was exciting, and they remembered the finish, which was Damien Priest going over there. And so in the grand scheme of things, does it matter? No, but still for long-term emotional investment from fans, I think they could have done a better job of making him look more like a monster and a star in the beginning of the match with Ridge Holland than having him get outsmarted by Damien Priest, in my personal opinion. Yeah,
they hyped him up with that package. Like you said, made him seem like a world beater. And then within the first 30 seconds of the match, he's being outsmarted by Damien Priest, who we've seen be outsmarted by Cameron Grimes numerous times. So it's kind of like a game that's being played over there.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Yeah, if he's been tricked by the loudmouth guy, Cameron Grimes, then I guess Ridge Holland really must be really foolish. You know what I mean? It kind of sends that unconscious message. But I see what you mean, though.
Well, speaking of Cameron Grimes, a man who is on his way to the top, We got Cameron Grimes versus Keith Lee next. And, you know, this was a different kind of Keith Lee that we saw in this match. I feel like Keith played no games. This was a very, you know, it was probably deemed a squash match, so to speak, for Keith after what Cameron Grimes tried to do to him. This is a blow-off match from their heat from last week. And, like, Keith just had the serious look the whole entire time. And I like this because I feel like they're putting him in this serious mode for him to go up against Karrion Kross. But I have a feeling, Ted, that this could backfire on them because it's like you want him to be serious, you want him to be focused. But what happens when a focused Keith Lee can't beat Karrion Kross? And then you've basically just killed all of that now. You know, like you've detriment, like basically put a big barrier right in front of Keith Lee. And I may be wrong in this, in the way that I'm seeing this, but this was a fun little match, and we got a little bit of business too to continue this after the match. But your thoughts on this match, kind of as a fun little squash match to make for this Cameron Grimes Keith Lee blow off.
I thought it was well done. It was a good chance to show a different intensity from Keith Lee. Showed that he is focused. I would say, to your point, it's always in how they do it and how they play it up. You're right. If a perfectly focused Keith Lee can't beat Karrion Kross, then what the heck? Where the heck does he go from there? But I think that can be part of the story. We put over, hey, as long as Keith Lee is focused, he can run through anybody. But of course, then the match happens, and then what happens? Scarlett does something that causes Keith Lee to lose focus, and then that in of itself could be the story. Well, if Keith Lee wouldn't have lost focus, he would have beaten Karrion Kross for sure. But because Scarlett took his focus, you know what I mean? Like, that's something. I'm not saying they will go that way or should go that way, but that's just an example of a way they could play that up to where, hey, it was, if Keith Lee would have just stayed focused, he could have won, and then that could be the chip on his shoulder, and they could play up that as a story going forward. I don't know if they're necessarily going with that. I would say I would have also liked to have more talk from the commentators, or maybe even a short production piece, or put over. They didn't put over enough that Keith Lee has accepted the challenge of Karrion Kross. It's more so that William Regal is not allowing people to make their own matches on the show as the commissioner, and that is more the reason. But I don't think this week it was as explicit. And I knew what was going on because I had been watching, but had I not been watching, I think I would have been confused, I guess, to a degree, or I guess feeling like, why is Keith Lee not giving the title shot when in actuality he already had accepted the title shot? You know what I mean? And so I think that should have been put over more, that, hey, Keith Lee is the fighting champion. He's more than ready. This is really a matter of bureaucracy and red tape that we have to get through in order to make the match happen. So I think that should have been put over more. But as far as the match, I think it was good to show that different side of Keith Lee and imply that if Keith Lee can keep going down this path, then maybe Karrion Kross won't have the chance that he thinks he has to take away the NXT championship.
Well, after the match, we got Scarlett Bordeaux kind of saying some things in Spanish, and as Keith Lee turns and looks at the Titantron, there is Karrion Kross just cutting a promo saying, I haven't seen Regal ever since I've come to the NXT. He's got this match that he's not wanting us to, like, he's not just going to give us this match, and then as they kind of pan out.
That's where, to your point, Colin, maybe Kross there could have explicitly, because I don't think he explicitly said that as far as, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember him explicitly saying William Regal isn't going to let us have this match. I do remember him saying, Regal hasn't been here since my debut. Yeah. So it was implied, but it wasn't explicit, unfortunately. Yeah, that's where a casual new viewer would have not known what that reference meant.
Yeah. So they pan out, and Karrion Kross has basically choked out Danny Burch with the little spittle coming out of his mouth, and just throws him down, and then he turns around and walks away. And Karrion Kross, you could tell, had been wearing his suit, and the whole locker room is destroyed. You see Oney Lorcan beaten up on the ground. You see another, like a agent or something over there in his suit, just beaten up in the corner. I mean, the whole locker room's torn up. Kross just looks like a complete badass as he walks away, having just destroyed this locker room. I mean, how do you – I mean, one guy just beating up, 5 or 6 people that are in a locker room. I mean, it's – I can see it because supposedly, does Karrion have some kind of special powers? Is there something – how do you play that up that he was able to just beat down a whole locker room like that?
Well, I think that just plays into him being a monster. I didn't really take note. Did they show the face that was laid out in that scene? I don't.
So that
I
again,
remember the promo, and I remember. I'm sorry. Did it show the faces of those who were laid out in that scene? I remember him taking out Danny Burch, and I don't know why I don't remember the back half of that.
You see Lorcan laying on the ground, but you can tell it's Lorcan because I mean he's got a very look, and then you see a guy in a suit kind of laying up against the lockers, like laying.
So potentially it was a producer or something. I think the implication is, one, he's a monster. So even if they did take him on face on, he would be able to hold his own. But I think the implication too is this was a sneak attack by Karrion Kross on these members of the locker room. So I think especially since again it was show don't tell, and the implication is this guy's a monster. We don't know, he's just taking people out. I think it's okay. Now, had they showed all the faces of people getting laid out and they're all the mid-tier to top-tier talent, then that could be an issue for building up different properties and characters on the show. But I think for this, since they didn't overly show too many people, and the implication was he potentially just attacked these guys out of nowhere earlier, right before the segment, I think it was okay. To your point, I think it should always be made to be as realistic as we can get. But I think for the purposes of the segment, I think it was okay personally.
Well, and he does say that all of this is on Keith Lee's head, but this is where I have a little bit of issue. If you watch all three products, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, Bray Wyatt and The Fiend is basically doing the same thing that Karrion Kross did this week. Last week on the SmackDown, he basically cut a promo at the beginning of the show under the Firefly Funhouse, which is like, hey, no one's safe. Like, no one in the locker room is safe. And it was, okay, cool. We'll see him attack like Daniel Bryan again or somebody. No, at the very end of the show, he came out and mandible clawed Alexa Bliss. So I feel like they're kind of using some of the same storylines, set up plot lines and stuff for NXT and on SmackDown because it seems similar.
And I'd say to that end, someone that doesn't watch the Raw and SmackDown shows, at least regularly, I do occasionally just see some clips or highlights of what's happened. So to that point, I was unaware that Bray Wyatt had done the same thing. But certainly, having a antagonist on the roster proclaim no one in the locker room is safe, and they're going to start taking out people in the locker room. Yeah, essentially that's the story that's happening on both NXT and SmackDown then. And so that's where, unfortunately, when you have multiple writing teams, I think this is something that absolutely can continue to happen. And it's where I think, unfortunately, it really requires having another team or individual, I'd say probably a team that's like a basically quality control that looks at, hey, what are the stories we're telling on all of our brands, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and trying to make sure, some stuff is going to be similar, and people are going to have jump starts and getting beat up backstage, but just trying to make sure at least that the tropes being used, the mechanisms for the story being used aren't too similar, and that they're not pretty much being close to the exact same thing, which it sounds like is what happened here. And I think it's just a matter of there's no one that really is oversight over the nuances and the storylines. I mean, of course, you have Vince and Triple H and those people, but you also have to think of all the tasks and things they have to do between not just writing the show, but doing all the business things they need to do, talking to potential sponsors, talking to event coordinators, talking to talent, and everything else that goes along with it. So it's almost like you need someone whose sole purpose is to watch through the shows and pick out the nuances of them, and to make sure that they're not crossing over storylines too similarly, and that each show can truly shine on its own as its own individual brand, and not just three versions of WWE. You know what I mean? It should really be their own individual show and appear that way.
Yeah. I totally feel you there, Ted. We actually get an announcement from William Regal that Dexter Lumis will not be in the ladder match for the North American Championship. And I did notice this last week, but I just thought he was selling the ankle. I noticed he and this, I don't know if you remember when we talked about this match, how Lumis was trying to come back in and they would just go and knock him back off the ropes, and he'd try to get back in. They just knock him back off. I saw him kind of tweak his ankle, and I had a feeling like that's why they did that. And then come to find out he really did injure his ankle, and it wasn't just, for the match purposes or whatever. And they're going to be replacing Dexter Lumis and with the winner of a fatal four-way with Finn Balor, Oney Lorcan, Johnny Gargano, Finn Balor, and then two more losers coming from the upcoming matches. I think Rich Holland was one of them that got put in, and then there will be, I think, one more person that is going to be filling in this fatal four-way match. They're way to come together.
It was my understanding. So I believe now, since we had not Rich Holland, we had Damian Priest win. So now it's Damian Priest and Bronson Reed, and then what would have been so I guess we're still.
Well, Lumis is out, so now this mystery person is going to come from Gargano, Finn Balor, I think Rich Holland, and then whoever else. I think maybe the other two is maybe it's not Rich Holland.
It would have been. Who would it have been? No, I think it would have been Rich Holland because Damien. It was the people that weren't pinned. Rich Holland was not
weren't pinned. Yeah.
So you got Balor, Gargano, and Holland. Oh, then maybe it's whoever isn't pinned next week. I don't know.
Yeah, it's whoever's not pinned next week. But that's also where the twist is, Ted, because there's a third person that we don't know about that's in that match. But before we get to that, we've got Legado del Fantasma, Drax Fandango down to the ring. They cut a promo. Basically, again, he's still trying to put over what Lucha is all about here in NXT. Tyler Breeze comes out, tries to make the save. He gets beaten up. And then Fantasma calls out Scott and basically just says, this is going to happen to you if you continue to call me out. Ted, I really am looking forward to Fantasma making his way up, possibly to the main roster or even, being that – I feel like the WWE as a whole really hasn't had a Hispanic wrestler that is as good on the mic as like an Eddie Guerrero. And I feel like, they've tried to do Cien Almas. He doesn't really speak English all that well. A lot of these other guys, they don't speak English all that well. Fantasma can speak it and is very eloquent and can get his point across in a way that Eddie Guerrero used to be able to get his point across. So I feel like he could definitely be like the next big Hispanic star here in the E. Just overall, what were your thoughts on this segment? Did this help push the business? I mean, are you excited to see what could possibly happen with Scott and Legado del Fantasma?
Absolutely, I think they're establishing these guys as not just credible heels as far as competitors, but they're really just a credible threat to the roster as a whole. And so taking out more established tag team in Breezango, who came to NXT from the main roster and shot as superstars. We saw them just a couple weeks ago with the really strong get over match against Everrise and showing that they're still, very much in contendership for the tag team championships. Now we have the heels that have taken out these established stars and showing that they are a threat to not only them, but to anyone else who maybe crosses their path. I think this was a great way for them to get heat. I thought the business was very well done. It was to obviously put more heat on them and to make them credible. And I think this more than did that. It made me excited to see, where we go from here. That's where I'm not sure. Do they bring back Drake Maverick? Do they bring in another baby face to have the shine here and get over? I'm not sure. I feel like we maybe still haven't necessarily gotten the conclusion with Drake yet. So it makes me think that probably we're going to see him somehow make his way back into this, which is interesting because he's out of the three baby faces, the smallest of the three, but potentially maybe the one to find a way to get back on Escobar and the Del Fantasma group that he's with.
Well, and as I was watching this, I mean, he seems so dominant. Like how do you, I guess later on when you need to pull that title off of him, how do you pull that title off of him, but really like keep him strong looking and keep him, because I mean, he's so dominant. You don't want to see him lose a title. I mean, is it something similar to like the Keith Lee thing where he wins the North American Championship, months or a year down the road, and then he relinquishes the cruiserweight title? Or I mean, how do you, from your perspective and your background, how do you take a title off a guy like this?
Well, first, I hope they don't do it for a long time. And that's where, honestly, as a writer, my mind wouldn't even be on how are we going to eventually take the title off of them? My mind just on how we continue to build this heat and keep building it, keep bringing it till it's at its boiling points where people are demanding to see someone get this title off of them. And then I think at that point, assuming you're doing everything else you need to on the other parts of the show, and you're continuing to build stars and make people care about the situations and characters that they're seeing, then hopefully you've done that job well enough to where you have someone that can finally be the guy to take the title off of him at that point. I always am not a big fan when titles get relinquished unless they have a not just a rationale, but a rationale that continues to build new stars and new characters. And that's where, I think potentially this North American title actually is an opportunity to do that. And I'm glad they're doing it in a way that's not a traditional tournament, because we've seen the heck out of those over the last year. And I think this is just a different way of getting to it. But anyway, so long story short, I honestly wouldn't even be thinking about how we're going to get the title off of Escobar right now. I'll just be thinking of how we can get heat. And then hopefully at the point where you finally are getting the maximum amount of heat with them, you've done a good enough job with everybody else, assuming possibly Drake here, since he's kind of been the focus of the story prior, as far as being the one to lose to Escobar so that way he could go on and win the championship. I feel like Drake will be the guy, and potentially with help from Breezango. So I guess in short term, if they're going to go towards taking the title off of him right now, which again, I personally wouldn't, I do think Drake should find a way to get his comeuppance and get his revenge. I think it would be okay for him to even get a win on him in like a street fight or something, say something to where, the tag teams can fight off each other and Drake can get his revenge without necessarily taking the title off of him. You know what I mean? And that can at least give Drake the comeuppance that he needs to continue on, and allows Escobar to give up a win without necessarily giving up the championship.
Or Drake Maverick. He still hasn't been able to consummate his marriage with his wife because he hasn't been able to win a title yet. Like that poor lady, she is spending a lot of money at Big Ray's Dildo Emporium. Up next, we've got Pat McAfee joins Tom Phillips at the commentary desk. We have, I deem this match the best NXT women's wrestler from Australia. We've got Indi Hartwell versus Tegan Knox. Hartwell basically comes out and boasts that she is way better than Tegan Knox because she beat Shotzi Blackheart, and Tegan Knox hasn't done anything lately. So I think this is just another showcase match for Tegan Knox, and maybe to get a little bit more exposure for Indi Hartwell. Again, Tegan Knox goes over. I just don't know what business really was forwarded to this other than us getting to see Pat McAfee go crazy for Tegan Knox shiningest wizard.
Yeah, I think part of the business, I do think the main business was Pat McAfee here. And so that's where the match itself was irrelevant. I think it was to establish that Pat McAfee is smooth things over. He smoothed things over backstage, and he's here to call things down the middle and just enjoy wrestling like he always has, and put the past with Adam Cole behind him. And so that way it meant more in the coming segments when clearly that was not the case. It was trying to paint a picture that they could swerve the fans, supposedly, into having a different outcome than what they were alluding to here. And that's, Pat McAfee's here to appreciate the wrestlers, respect the wrestlers, and enjoy the show. That being said, I think from just a rationale standpoint, as far as the match itself goes and the competitors, I think this was just again, the main business, I think, was Pat McAfee, but they utilized this as a way to also give Tegan Knox a win back after coming off a loss. And it didn't really matter for Hartwell because she also got to put over that she had beat the person that Tegan Knox lost to recently. And so I think in a sense it allowed them, I don't think it necessarily elevated them as characters, maybe Tegan Knox a little bit, but I don't think it necessarily buried them or made them any. It definitely didn't weaken them as characters, but that's okay because again, the spotlight to me was more about Pat McAfee being on commentary than the match itself, and that's where it's one of those rare times when the things happening in the ring really aren't even the business, and they're really more of a backdrop. Which it's a shame when that happens, but thankfully it was kept short, no one got hurt, and it was a fine little match. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it was also short and sweet to the point.
Yeah, and I like the kind of what you said, bringing him out early instead of bringing him out exactly when the Adam Cole match kind of lets you get that little bit of a swerve. Yeah.
Right. Because if they would have brought him out right before that match, it's like, okay, well, we know it's going to happen. And even though I think people probably knew it's going to happen, at least bringing him out, so, maybe they really are just bringing him to do commentary. And maybe he's going to play fair up until, TakeOver SummerSlam. And then we're going to see it. But no, we saw, as we're about to talk about, tonight was the night things were going to blow up.
Yes, and that's what we are about to talk about. It is time for us to pay our respects here on the Next Level Wrestling View. It is now time for Imperium.
And those of you that are listening, which is everybody, because we're doing this on this part of the podcast, Colin, of course, had to do the Imperium pose as out of respect for Imperium, and as well as just I don't know. I'm reaching for a funny comment, and I'm not finding it.
It's just a reason for me to cue up the music there, because we always pay our respects with a little Symphony No. 9 from Imperium. These guys, man, I just am so in love with them. I am learning every day watching Imperium. Before we started the show, Ted, I wiped my boots off before sitting in my podcasting chair.
Well, it's what you should. Absolutely.
Yeah, always. We've got Imperium, Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel versus Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. This is a really good match. You're going to get you can't get a bad match from these four guys, I feel like. I mean, O'Reilly and Fish are consummate workers. Eichner's been in NXT for a while now. And, not to just the experience that him and Barthel have wrestling all over the world. Imperium goes over here. This was a really fun match. The whole match, though, they kept teasing the Adam Cole Pat McAfee thing, because where Adam Cole stood, they kept doing the shots where you would see Cole and then over his shoulder would be McAfee and Tom Phillips. Like, they had everything set up perfectly. So you could tell through the whole match that they were teasing for something to come here. Undisputed Era, of course, is going to lose here. They're still pushing Imperium. They're still trying to find something for these guys to do, possibly, them getting moved up to the main roster. This match had a lot of business in it, Ted. It was, the business, of course, with Pat McAfee and Adam Cole, which erupted after the match. And then, of course, Imperium and Undisputed Era blowing off, having their little bit of feud. And actually, Bello hit me up, and at Worlds Collide, we actually got Imperium versus Undisputed Era in like a big 8-man tag match. So that might be, if you're interested in seeing that, that might be something to look out and check out, guys. Worlds Collide, which Bello got the PhD in NXT. So if we have any questions or anything, he would be the one that I would go to about that stuff. But overall, what are your thoughts on this match before we get to the brawl that happened afterwards?
I think it was good. It was, as you implied, it was a backdrop really for the end. The spotlight was really about McAfee and Cole here, which is a shame when you have time for a match and have the time to tell a story, but knowing going into it that really the story isn't about you. It's about what the aftermath. That being said, kudos to these guys as professionals, because they worked this match not as if they were a backdrop to a story, but as if they were the story, and competing as such, as if they were trying to desperately and urgently win, so that way they could get their winner's purse, their payday. And they were fighting tooth and nail against each other. And so I thought from a technical, and that's where I could get nitpicky, but I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to get nitpicky here, because it was not about the match. It was more about the aftermath. And so I thought, at the very least, because it is hard when, not hard, but I will say I've seen it where guys don't put in as much of an effort because they know that the match that they're putting on really is a backdrop for what's going to happen afterwards. I did not get this vibe at all. I took it as these guys are treating this as if this is the main event on their big event show, and they're going after it. And so I'd say kudos to them, because even though I felt like, as a viewer that has watched wrestling, I felt like I knew something was going to happen because of, like you said, the cameras kept alluding to it, where they kept shooting back to Adam Cole and Pat McAfee, who was making smart comments off and on. But that being said, at least from an in-ring competition and action standpoint, I feel like they did a good enough job in there that for at least some time, the viewer could be drawn away from that and feel like they were watching a true competition for the here. And so to that point, I thought that they brought an intensity that I thought warranted it, given that they weren't the main focus for the business.
Yeah. So you basically, you get them jawing back and forth between each other while the match is going on. Cole basically is like, hey man, like everything's cool. Like we made up. He tries to walk away, but McAfee just throws that calls him an angry elf. Cole proceeds to pour the bottle of water onto McAfee, and that just starts, like, basically Cole and McAfee start going after each other. Everybody comes out from the back. Triple H, HBK, all these people are trying to pull them off and separate them and keep them everything. And Cole tries to jump over the announce table to get at McAfee. And while he's like being pinned down and everything, his head is perfectly like over the announce table. And McAfee comes and punts his head like a football, proceeding to knock him out. Triple H like gets physical with McAfee. I was kind of surprised by that. And then you basically end the show with Shawn asking Triple H, like, hey, are you sure you got medics coming? Like, he needs help. And that was how we ended the show. So when they have a match, Ted, and actually something was posted in the Hami Media discussion group that the match is already signed for NXT TakeOver 30. So they're having their first match at NXT TakeOver. Do you think this match is going to be kind of designed around, like, if Pat McAfee can like kick Adam Cole, it's over, because they kind of set this precedent with that match? Is that like a story they're going to tell?
I think they should, and I think they will, because certainly the implication here is, hey, if Pat McAfee can punt Adam Cole, he's going to knock him the hell out, because we saw it clearly here. And so I think certainly that's going to be the thread, and they should absolutely tease that to the nth degree during the match. Whether or not they actually have him pull it off in the end just depends on whether or not they're going to continue on with the feud, and that's where I'm honestly not sure. I personally am looking forward to this. I know Pat McAfee has put in the reps. People know him as just an NFL punter or kicker, and they don't know, or at least a lot of people I don't think know, that behind the scenes he's always been an avid wrestling fan and has actually taken the time to train privately with one hustler, Rip Rogers, for at least for a couple of years, doing some private sessions with him. And so I don't know, I haven't seen him work, so I can't make any commentary, but I can say at least, though, if he's gotten his reps in the ring working with Rip, he'll at least be able to be competent and hold his own in there. And so I'm excited to see where they go with this. I think people are going to end up being pleasantly surprised probably by how well this pulled off. Now, granted, I've eaten my words before and it may happen again, but I'd like to believe that this is going to be one of those matches that is going to exceed expectations, and at least I hope so. So
now is McAfee, because at first he kind of seemed not necessarily like the heel. I mean, yeah, he was kind of egging Cole on in that first, like the segment where Cole blows up on him and everything, that led to this. But they're really establishing McAfee as the heel here. The constant, you're an elf, you're never going to do this, you're never going to do that. Like, he came to supposedly smooth things over, and Cole was trying to be the better man. And then again, McAfee just goes over the top, turns on him and stuff. So I feel like they're really trying to paint Cole, and I know you hate those terms, but in terms of face and heel dynamics, I think they're trying to paint Cole as the good guy here, as the one that everybody should cheer for and pull for. And McAfee's kind of the asshole that's coming into our sport, so to speak, and trying to run amok and just being a dick.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll be honest, I did not quite get that vibe. Not saying that they couldn't go that way. And part of this is my bias is I knew of Pat McAfee before he even did anything in wrestling. I always would listen to, driving to my patients in the morning. He was often a guest correspondent on the Bob and Tom show. And I knew him as just being the raucous funny guy. And so to me, what the things he said to Adam Cole here is him playing up that kind of funny, smart ass that he's known to be on those programs. Now, to that point, as an uneducated, or not uneducated, but a viewer that hasn't previously seen this character or what he's done, I think that's a fair point to make. He kind of comes across as kind of a smart ass, and if they are going to making Pat McAfee the antagonist or the heel in this situation, then certainly they've laid the groundwork for them to go that way. I'm not overly convinced they're going that way, but you may be correct. I'm not going to say you're not, but I'll say only as someone that has been familiar with Pat McAfee's work prior to going into wrestling. To me, this was just him playing up Pat McAfee just up to the higher level that what's needed for a storyline, because he's always been known to be the smart ass cracking jokes and busting balls, if you will, as just being, the jock guy that, is horsing around and roughhousing and just trying to have fun. And sometimes he says things that maybe go a little over the line, but he's just trying to be funny and have a good time. So it will be interesting to see how they go with it. And certainly I would say in the next couple of weeks, hopefully they do make it clear as far as who is not necessarily the face or the heel, but the protagonist and the antagonist, the person that is having to overcome opposition in order to achieve something that the fans want them to achieve. So whether that's Pat McAfee overcoming Undisputed Era and Adam Cole and having to try to get a win, or Pat McAfee being the douchebag non-wrestler who thinks he's better than the wrestlers, and Adam Cole as the wrestler's wrestler has to stand up and shut Pat McAfee's mouth once and for all. It's where I'm not sure, and I think really you could go either way. It just depends on how they're going to double down on that story. And really, I think it depends on how they're going to book Adam Cole going forward from here. And when he makes his debut on the main roster, is he going to come in as a big baby face or a heel? And that's where I think, based upon the booking of where we see from here, will probably determine how Adam Cole's next run, whether it be on Raw or SmackDown, goes. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Now, I'm going to need Hameen to audit your taxes, because you're dropping a lot of Bob and Tom tidbits here and there. So I think you're being paid under the table by Bob and Tom here. But I was always a John Boy and Billy guy growing up.
Oh, really? I love all the morning radio shows. That's one of the ones I listen to because it just happened to be one of the few that was here. I listened to Howard Stern for a while, too, until he got moved to satellite. And so it just a matter of who happens to be on the radio dial at that time of day. But if Bob and Tom are listening, though, I will say I'm not getting paid by them. But I am actually a fan of their stuff. And if they'd like to get a wrestling education, then I'm more than glad to come into the studio and do that for them.
well, we did miss one thing. During the show, we actually went outside and they're interviewing Damian Priest. And after seeing that big giant hematoma on his head, in this video, he's wearing the sunglasses outside. And, if this was shot before the match, they did a really good job of editing it and cutting it so that you couldn't tell if the hematoma was still there with the giant glasses that he wore and everything. Because I was looking for it, Ted. Like, I was just like, ooh, I wonder when this is shot. He's being interviewed, and then Thick Boy, Bronson Reed, it kind of gets out of his car, tells Damian Priest, like, hey, congratulations, good job. And that leads to them having a match between each other next week. And Damian Priest basically just tells Thick Boy, like, you're not as thick as you think you are. You're going to get it. And then they also teased the other triple threat match, which I can't remember. There's
I got
it's
it here.
Kushida. That's the other person that we haven't yet seen on NXT here yet. He's got to be the favorite for this match. It's Kushida,
Cameron Grimes, and
a mystery opponent. Yeah, that could be a good match. I mean, Cameron Grimes and Kushida, two cruiserweights. Do you think they're going to throw a big guy in there with them?
It seems to be their MO is to throw someone that's going to be a clash of styles. So with both Kushida and Cameron Grimes being more, quick-paced kind of cruiserweight style, I'm not saying necessarily the cruiserweights, but that style, quick-paced style, it makes me inclined to believe that it is going to be someone with some size difference between them. So we'll see. What would be interesting, I don't think they're going to go with it, maybe an interesting twist if, although I don't see it happening now based on what he did backstage today, but like if the mystery opponent was Karrion Kross and this was his way of, going after Keith Lee, and he's not going to relinquish the North American title. He wants, he's going to get that title, then he's going to get Keith Lee's title, and he's going to get all the championships. You know what I mean? So
well, that
would be an interesting twist, though, if he were to be the third guy with Cameron Grimes and Kushida. But then I think that also it makes it a foregone conclusion as far as who's going to end up with the North American title. But that would be an interesting twist, though, to be fair.
Well, and we do get a Karrion Kross match for next week, as Danny Burch didn't like the fact that he got choked out.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
And a match was set up with Danny Burch and Karrion Kross for that next week. But Ted, I think it's about time for class to be over. We should probably give everybody their assignment for next week.
Yeah, before the bell rings, I do have an assignment for you all for next week. And this week, we're going to go back to talking about Escobar and his cronies. Had a great opportunity to get heat this week, took out Breezango. So your homework for this week is I want to know the buildup between here and TakeOver 30. So it's really up to you. And that's where I love the creative freedom and some of the things you are coming up with. My bias was, as I implied earlier, was Drake Maverick perhaps gets back involved, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe there's another superstar you think that should jump in there with Breezango. So what happens from here? Does Breezango find either Drake Maverick or someone else to get back on top for these next few weeks and then go into the pay-per-view, or does Escobar continue to get heat? Keep me interested in this feud, and I want to know also what happened to TakeOver. Are we paying off the angle? Are we doing something to cause more heat to be generated to build to a bigger match? That's up to you. So I want to know the build-up to TakeOver and what happens at TakeOver between Escobar and his cronies and Breezango and whoever they bring in as their babyface tag team partner, whether that's Drake Maverick or somebody else. And that is your homework assignment for the week.
All right, guys, you heard it. Don't be late. Don't forget your homework. Don't try to do it, 5 minutes before the bell's ringing and me and Dr. Ted are pulling things out of our briefcases, getting ready for class. So guys, your homework is basically how do we get to NXT TakeOver 30 with Legado del Fantasma, Swerve Scott, Drake Maverick, that whole feud that's been going on. So we'll be looking forward to.
Yeah, he did call it Swerve. So yeah, that's where you're right, because I forgot about that. So that brings up an even more interesting point. Yeah, did they just keep it on Swerve as far as that was the focus this week? But we know in the past it's been Drake, or is it someone different? But that is up to you all, and I'm very curious and excited to see the stuff you all come up with for next week.
Well, Ted, I again thank you for having me on the show.
I guess I should let people know, in case we have some new listeners, where they can send in their homework.
Oh, that is true.
Rather than just having it and not turning it in. You can email me at bookthedoctor@gmail.com. Again, it's bookthedoctor@gmail.com. One of these weeks, we are going to get an official next level email whenever I have the time to sit down and make one. But for right now, send it to bookthedoctor@gmail.com, and we will read through those. And next week, grade your homework as far as what happens from here between Breezango and their babyface partner and Legado del Fantasma. Excited.
Right.
Should be good.
Yeah. I'm super excited for this. Like I espoused earlier during the show, I am just excited to see what's going to happen with Fantasma here. Guys, you can listen to me. I am Colin Wysong every week on the Smack Attack here at hackerhameen.podbean.com, as well as the one half of your teaching duo here. And I'm also learning. Don't think that I'm just doing all the teaching. I'm definitely being a sponge and soaking up as much as I can here for the Next Level Wrestling Review. And then, check us out Thursdays. I'm going to try to get the Ridiculously Random podcast dropped today.
Awesome.
Myself and Matthew Schaffer Gage, we did top 5 sports movies. And so what would be what's your number 1 sports movie, Ted?
Wow, that's a tough one. There's, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with the lowbrow humor, because that's always been my MO. I'm going to go with basketball. It's just off the top of my head.
Ted, this is why you and I are 2 peas in a pod, because basketball was my number 1.
Awesome.
Teaser, spoiler alert, guys. Go out and listen. Thank you again, Ted. So put everybody over. Let's go ahead and get out of here.
Absolutely. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Ted the Man Beast. Or, of course, on Facebook, just look me up, Ted McNaler. Of course, don't forget to subscribe also. Besides, of course, listening on Podbean or iTunes or wherever you're listening to, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page, Hameen Media Group. We're dropping lots of fun clips from the various shows that we're doing, as well as putting up some different new affiliate shows. There's a debate show we have on there between MSG and Rick Vickery arguing Family Guy versus South Park. We're going to have more debates on there shortly, as well as doing a taste test drinking show with beer and spirits. and as well as just all kinds of fun things. Of course, conspiracy theories they're deep diving into, and all kinds of fun stuff on the Hami Media Group YouTube page. So definitely check that out. Of course, you can also check me out on the Monday Locker Room, as well as the Impact Attack each and every week. And of course, every Thursday we bring in the Next Level NXT review, and hopefully we're hoping going forward either next week or the week after, besides also presenting also doing a live stream on YouTube. We have you out, so looking forward to giving you various options to be able to check out your Next Level NXT review. But with that being said, for my good friend and colleague, unless you have anything else you need to go out on here, Colin.
Well, Ted, actually,
okay.
While you were, I had you do that to
buy time.
Buy time. Okay. I actually have created the new email address that you can send your emails to here at the Next Level Wrestling Review. And actually, Ted,
this is why we pay the big bucks, Colin.
Our email is going to be nextlevelwrestlingreview@gmail.com. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't blow up Ted's inbox anymore, because he could be missing valuable bookings with all those emails that you guys are flooding in his email. So start sending your emails to nextlevelwrestlingreview@gmail.com.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it there, Colin. Thank you very much. It's it is Next Level Wrestling Review @gmail.com. Send in your homework there. And in the meantime, continue to just be fans of professional wrestling, sports entertainment, what have you. Continue to join us for all the latest and greatest original content as part of the Hami Media Group. And we will see you next week on the Next Level NXT.